Welcome to this week's Real Talk with Jill and Tia and our special guest, David.
Yes, welcome. We are
Thank you so
excited you're
much.
here.
So glad to be here. This is really cool. Thank you.
Yes, well, you're welcome. We're happy to have you on the show, and we're happy to be able to give this gift of David to the audience.
Oh,
We're excited about it.
I thought that was my 92-year-old mother who would feel that way, but okay.
Well, and she might. We're not going to take that away from her.
Right, that's true.
She might not either, but she doesn't go on LinkedIn.
Well, that's why we have our whole audience is going to now have the gift of you and knowing more about food safety mediation and succession planning.
Well, what a combination, huh?
Yeah. It is.
Yes. But you know what? That's what makes each of us unique. And the reason why we step into the space every week is because people are out here doing amazing things in food safety. And so this time is really for us to share, right? Share great things that are happening, tips, ways that we can incorporate, these little tips into the way that we are doing business or the way that we show up at work. And then we have it, right? For when we need it. And so we love to share that. We love for our audience too, for you all to share your perspectives and ask your questions and be a part of the talk. We can't see you, but we'll be able to see your comments. So please join in the discussion because that's why we do Real Talk every week.
Yeah, so welcome to the audience.
Yes.
If you've been here before, we have you tell us where you're joining from. We love to see and we love when everybody shares. And of course, if you're on replay, use #replay.
Absolutely. So. And David, we always do like to say, how's the weather where you are? Right before we got in, David was telling us that he's in Oregon, and yes, it is sun behind him. So hopefully you all are.
This is not a virtual background. This is actually sun in September in Oregon, which actually, little secret here, because you guys were in Oregon in May, but I'm an Oregonian, born and raised, and so September is our best month. So if you're going to visit, come see me. September is the time.
Okay.
And probably I could be forced to take you on a winery tour because they're only about a half hour from my house.
Ooh, okay. So now we know.
Making a note right now.
Absolutely. Well, it has been rainy here in Baltimore. Not today, but last night we got a really bad storm come through. But today it's been beautiful.
And in Minnesota, we have perfect fall weather.
I see those sunflowers. They look beautiful.
It kind of reflects what's happening outside. It's this nice, crisp, cool air, but yet the sun has been out. So it's nice during the day, but see, I got my sweater on already. It's sweater season. I'm ready.
Nice. Yes.
Well, we're talking about more than weather today, right? We're going to talk about food safety mediation and succession planning. And David, I've told you, I didn't even know what food safety mediation was, and I still need to know more, which is why we're so glad you're on.
Well, I'm happy to spread the word and especially with this group, because that's near and dear to my heart, because I've spent the majority of my legal career. I retired last fall from active practice, but the majority of my 37 years in law was based on food safety on the industry side. So your audience, I have a feeling, is industry folks. And so I've been there on the legal side on some pretty big food safety matters in my legal career.
Well, and we love being able to share you because I think most of our audience has heard, and we talked about this earlier, Bill Marler and Shawn Stevens. We know them, but we are happy to introduce them to somebody else with a different perspective.
Well, I know both of those gentlemen. They're fantastic lawyers. The best thing about it is I'm a retired lawyer, which makes me even more fantastic. But Mr. Marler and I had a quarter century together and did about 1,500 cases opposite each other.
Wow.
So I do know Mr. Marler pretty well. But now he has to be nice to me because I'm a mediator.
And we're going to get into that in a minute.
Yes, it is. Yes. We're definitely going to dig into that a little bit more. But it's awesome to see the connections, right, that happens in the industry. And if this is your first time joining us, we're going to dive deep into this topic, but we just want to say, the reason why we do this every week is because at Catalyst, we focus on people, and we focus on helping them and empowering them to transform into the leaders that we need them to be in order to achieve more, live authentically, and drive business growth, which is what we're all looking to do. And when you focus on people and the well-being of your people, then you will find that leaders emerge. And the things you've been focusing on around food safety culture and program rollout and mitigating risks, so you don't have to call David for mediation. All of that starts with your leaders. And if your leaders have the right skills to be able to handle these complex situations. So that's what we do at Catalyst. We're passionate about people, and we're passionate about that growth. And so we come to you every Wednesday at noon Eastern to talk about those things. And like Jill said, today we're talking about food safety mediation with David. And so David, I want to actually turn it over to you first and just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your career and what actually led you to food law in particular.
Okay. Well, I'll try to give you the 1-minute version. Okay. I'm an Oregon boy, born and bred. I went to college at Oregon State. I know everybody follows the Beavers. Thank you very much. And I went and got a music degree, believe it or not. And so and everybody knows that if you have a music degree, the next thing you have to do is go to law school.
Yeah. Okay. So, what instrument were you playing, by the way?
Were or am? No, pretty much were. That would be the trumpet.
The trumpet.
Yeah. Okay. And I like to call, nobody will believe me, but I like to call Oregon State Music Department the Juilliard of the West.
Ooh.
So we had.
Sorry, I just had to find out, and I interrupted your whole story.
Yeah, that's all right. Well, it's not that interesting. So I did go to law school here in Portland at Lewis and Clark. And I started my legal career. I worked at a grand total of 2 firms in 37 years. So I'm quite a mover. I quite move around quite a lot. And so my legal career was spent on the civil side. So I've never done criminal work. Got sometimes a little close to it on the food safety side, but I've never done criminal work, and I've done civil work. And about, in the late 90s, we'll call it, I started getting a food safety case or two, meaning when there was a food outbreak, I ended up handling either consumer injury type of situations or disputes within the supply chain. And I know your viewers are going to know a little bit how there might be a dispute in the supply chain when there's an outbreak. So I don't think I have to explain that very much. So one thing led to another, and let's keep moving forward and into the 2000s. I ended up just, kind of through showing up, ended up doing a lot of food safety cases and mediation, not mediations, not yet, but I did a lot of food safety cases, all on the industry side. Okay. So you might have heard of our friend, Mr. Marler, and he's on the consumer side, and I was always on the industry side of a food safety matter. So I ended up by the mid 2000s, I was pretty much full time doing this. And I ended up continuing to work for the industry. And eventually, last fall, I retired from law practice. And then moved into thank you very much. It was a great career, but I wanted to try a few other things. And so I'm trying a few other things. And one of them is the mediation. So I'll stop there. That was more than 1 minute. I'm sorry.
We're not timing.
I had to focus on the music part.
That's important to know.
It is because we have music. I played the clarinet. Jill, did you play?
I was clarinet too, and violin. So
see? There you go.
You're in great company.
You didn't get into Oregon State music though.
I didn't. So I did not get to go to the Juilliard of the West.
Right. True.
So
true.
All right. Well, David, maybe you could even start, because I think a lot of people would go, yep, we kind of understand Mr. Marler does, what Mr. Stevens does, but what is food safety mediation?
You bet. So, like I said, up until last fall, I was a practicing lawyer in a law firm doing 100% food safety. And during the last year or so of my practice, I was kind of interested and got asked by a few people to, would you mediate a food safety matter? Because you do know, at least from the legal side, you do know about food safety. And so I ended up doing that a little bit my last couple of years of practice. And so what does that mean? Let's talk about that. So when we have a food safety dispute, let's call it that, often it's in the legal realm. In other words, there's lawsuits filed. Not always, but sometimes there are lawsuits, especially when there's an outbreak. Mm-hmm. And, a person like Bill Marler is going to be involved in any national outbreak from day one on behalf of injured consumers. So there's litigation where I got involved. And in our civil justice system, depends on the state, but really about 95 to 98% of lawsuits don't go to trial. Now, we need trial lawyers, and I was a trial lawyer, but maybe your audience didn't realize that. But the vast majority of cases either get dismissed some way, maybe on legal grounds, or more likely in a civil case, especially with the food industry, they're going to be resolved through settlement. And so, of course, lawyers can settle cases on their own. It happened a lot more in the beginning of my career, but things have changed somewhat so that it's not unusual at all that we would use a mediator. And all a mediator is a third party who doesn't have an interest in the litigation, is not representing either side, is not a judge, is not making decisions. As I had a mediation the other day, and I told the people, I can't make you do anything, nor can I order you to do anything like a judge can. So it's a private agreement where the parties see if they can get together and come to resolution. And I've always enjoyed that in my career. Obviously, I was on the food industry side for 25 years. Now I'm kind of helping both parties. And I only do food safety mediations. That's kind of unusual. I mean, I don't know of anybody who's only doing food safety mediations, but most mediators will do a variety of cases. And I decided, just because of where I have any skills or my interest level in, I only do food safety mediations. So hopefully that answers a little bit of what you were asking about what a mediator does.
Yeah. I'm curious, as you talk about like mediation and playing as this third party, why do you like playing that role? And what do you see as the benefits of having a mediator for the industry and the consumer?
Oh boy, I could go on for a while on this, but I'll try to hit the highlights. I'm a big believer in mediation. I'm a big believer in mediation for food safety cases. I had it drilled into me about 25 years ago when I started working with the food industry that brand is key. And we've seen, those of us who've of a certain age, been around a little while, have seen a number of food companies that don't exist anymore because they got into a very bad outbreak situation, food safety event, I'll call it. And so brand is so key. And, in my career, I've done a fair amount of trial work in front of juries. I've also done trial work in front of juries on food safety cases. I've also done what's called mock trials, where we kind of try things out in front of a private group that comes before it really counts. And I know that food safety is a very hot button issue for jurors. And there's a lot of trust that's put in the industry when you put something in your mouth. So I've learned a lot about that over the years. And so if our industry, I'll call it R, even though I'm a mediator, if that industry can potentially be able to resolve a case without those issues coming up in a public forum, I think it's generally better. Do all cases settle? They don't. Do some cases need to go to trial in this world? Possibly, but not generally.
Mm.
Then on the consumer side, we have, I've worked now, of course, when I was a food safety defense lawyer, I talked to and sat across the table from literally hundreds of injured people. I've sat and talked to parents who lost their children because of an E. coli infection or are going to have a kidney transplant and be on dialysis for the rest of their life. And so now, as a mediator on those issues, I hope that I can give them a little perspective about what it is they want out of a jury, what a jury can and cannot do. Juries can only award money. Juries can't do anything other than that. And so that's what I talk to the other side. And I hope they know that I was a defense lawyer. They know that I was on the food industry side. And obviously so do the lawyers who hire me. But I hope I can give a perspective, having seen both sides and having, seen a lot of people suffer, regardless of whose fault it is. Let's put that away. But just seeing people suffer is tough. So So that's that's why I enjoy it quite a lot. I know it's an extremely narrow area. So, I'm not doing this every day, but when they do come up, it's honored to be asked, and it's an honor for me to be asked by the consumers' lawyers too, because they might think that possibly I would have some kind of a bias, and I don't think I do. My bias is to see if we can't reach a resolution for both sides.
Yeah. That's so interesting to me.
It is. So
well, maybe I should invite you to one of these mediations.
Ooh, that would be.
Yeah, I don't know if they'd let you in, but it's an exhausting. I had one, like I said, on Tuesday, a couple of days ago, and it's an exhausting process, especially for the mediator. Not especially, but the mediator has to go to both sides. We break up into separate rooms, and so while I'm in one room, the other side can kind of relax for a little while, and then I'm in the other room and the other side. But I enjoy it.
So even as you talk about it, because it is exhausting and it still takes work, how would someone know if food safety mediation was the right track for them to actually go down that path versus the other direction?
Well, lawyers are often involved in this process, and good lawyers know that a jury trial is risky. The food industry should know that a jury trial is risky, and I think I can say that with some experience because I've seen enough cases on the food world go to trial, and some didn't turn out too well. And so when you have a risky proposition on both sides, and you have a cost investment and you have a risk investment, then it's a good time to see if the parties can't get together and kind of assess those risks. And that's what a mediator does. They might not like hearing what I have to say in the consumer room or in the industry room. But I told them just the other day, if you think I'm going to say this, what do you think the other lawyer is going to say at trial?
Yeah.
So I might point out to you a few of your soft spots. And I'm not trying to jab you. I'm just trying to make you realize that there's risks.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't know. I've talked to a lot of food industry CEOs, and when I was giving a lot of talks and speeches, I used to put up a headline that said, "Which headline do you like better?" The first headline was, food company wins E. coli case against brain injured child.
Mhm.
The second headline was food company loses E. coli case against brain injured child. Now, which headline do you like better? What do you guys think?
Yeah, frowny face on both of those.
There you go.
Right, neither of those sound like the headline you want for your brand.
Right.
Not really. I don't think when the food company wins a case, wins meaning you're
not winning.
You're not winning.
Yeah.
And so again, I am admittedly biased because I've been in the food world for so long, but most companies, but I think especially in the food industry, that's probably not the kind of look that you want to have out there.
Yeah. I'm curious, as you know, like you said, many of our audience, they work in industry, and a big piece of food safety, right, is that we're helping the organization understand their risk, right? We're mitigating, we're eliminating risk, right? And ultimately, we do have in our mind of we're protecting, we're putting things into place to protect the consumers, right? To ensure that they're not going to be sick or, die from the food that we're making, number one. And number two, we also have this balance of how do we make sure that we're doing the right thing, documenting the right stuff, so that if the organization has to show documentation or has to prove their case or has to walk through these things, right, that we have the objective evidence to show what we've been doing, right, to show how we're closing gaps and all of these things. And so you, like, thinking about your background and your experience, what are maybe one or two things, as someone that's working in industry, that's a food safety, professional, that's, working with their company, what are one or two things you wish we just knew about this whole process, either preventing from getting there, or if you are going through it, that you wish we knew?
Sure. Well, if I had $1 for every time I've seen emails from the industry where a person says they know what the source of the food or the problem is and they've solved the outbreak, I might have enough money to retire on, or I would have retired, because that's one of the things I tell people. The people that are watching here are food safety professionals, food scientists. They know 100 times more than I ever learned about science. But what I did learn was about law and about juries and things like that. So that would be one thing, is, all you can do is report what the facts are. The time for making conclusions about what those facts mean. And I've just learned over my legal career, how much things can change. And I've been through some pretty heavy food outbreaks, as one little part on the legal side. And I've been involved right in the beginning when things are really hot from the media. And the facts changed hourly, don't they? So now that's when things are going on. You also asked about before, what can a good food safety professional do? It's somewhat similar, and that is stick to facts, be objective. If you're mad about something, probably it's not the best time to write an email about how this is stupid or mad or you're mad or something like that, because everything you write, a good lawyer will find. And so you need to, now, does that mean I'm telling you never to write anything down? Of course not. Of course not. I know that's what you do as part of your job, and with training and things like that. But, just kind of a thing to keep in mind, that in my world, or the world I was in, people like Bill good lawyers are going to be able to get that kind of information. And those are the kind of situations where we could have an emotional jury reaction, maybe rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the times we probably want to go ahead and get those cases settled to take them to trial if we can. So does that help? That answer your question? Yeah,
it does, and it definitely hits on things that I felt as a professional, in food safety. Like, even, some of the things that we do struggle, and sometimes we're frustrated, right? Like, so taking that information and saying, okay, I need to take a few beats, I need to take a moment, right? Really think about what I want to document, right? Like, what do I want to send to my group, right? Like, even for their own benefits, right? Like, what do I want to document that it's clear on, like, exactly what you're saying, the facts.
Facts, yeah. And, in my 22, 23 years focused on the food industry, I never met a food safety professional, or a CEO for that matter, that wanted to poison their customers.
Yeah.
Okay. Never met such a person. Now, we know that there were a few of those people, or at least were extremely negligent, and now they're in jail.
Yeah.
I think you know about those situations. That's extremely rare. I want to tell your audience, that's just so rare. But that has happened. But those are not the kind of people I've been around in my professional career as a lawyer, working with the food industry. The kind of people that I've been around take food safety so seriously, probably because they all have raised kids, or many people have raised kids. And believe me, you don't really want to be sitting across the table, or now as a mediator, I see some pretty terrible stuff about some of these pathogens. Your audience knows about pathogens, and some of them can do some pretty terrible harm. But obviously I have a little bias. Don't tell, I'm a mediator. I'm not supposed to have a bias.
Well, no, but I think that I think that also leads to sometimes the passion people have, like, when they are perhaps communicating, when they're like, I know this is the right thing, or I know this is the wrong thing. And I think sometimes that's, like you said, that's part of that emotional part that gets in there, because we want to make sure we're being clear that as a professional, like, we're doing our part to help move that forward.
Yeah. I think one other thing you said, that especially working in a startup environment, there's people that listen in on Real Talk, and they work for smaller organizations. Right. And so the social media marketing around, like, an outbreak or something is happening, right? So media coverage is kind of happening. We've seen some companies, like, write Facebook statuses and all of these things, when really the facts haven't really came out yet, or you're in the middle of your investigation, but conclusions are being said on social media, right? And so, I mean, that's another struggle for food safety professionals, and something to keep in mind if you work at a startup, that you are staying close to whoever has the keys to social media, to say, we are not doing any statements right now. We're just looking at the facts. This is when we would do a statement.
Yeah, I've been on some of those outbreak teams, and I observed over the years that sometimes people don't stay in their lanes very well. In other words, as the lawyer, I probably should not be the epidemiologist. Okay. Some people would think I shouldn't even be in the room, but which might be fair. But the epidemiologist on the outbreak team should probably not be the PR person. And things are moving quickly, and very quickly sometimes in and out. You know that better. Your audience knows that better than I do. But they can move very, very quickly. And so I always, when I was practicing, I always counseled our friends to, make sure you're just staying in your lane. Each person has a very important part, and the food safety professionals have a very, very important part. But we need to remember that these outbreaks are investigated not internally, but they're investigated by the government. And we have a public health system that I've been alongside my whole career. I think a lot of public health people. So do juries, by the way. I've tested it. I've seen it, and I've tested it. Some folks have some thoughts about the government in general on a jury, as you can imagine. But uniformly, I have learned that people trust public health. And so we need to, our industry needs to be. Did I say R again? Ooh, okay.
And you can, because you are in food safety too.
Okay, yeah, R.
You never really leave.
I'm kind of destroying my credibility as a mediator here. So, but our industry, plays a key part in that. And the best kind of situations is where the food industry and the public health authorities are working as much as they can, hand in hand. We all have the same goal, right? We don't want one person to get sick.
No.
And if one person gets sick, and it might have something to do with our product, we don't know yet, but if it might, we don't want another person to get sick.
Right.
Not at all.
Absolutely.
Well, good. I think that definitely helps us, and hopefully our audience as well, understand a little bit more about food safety mediation.
Yeah.
What it's for, when you would perhaps go down that way.
Yeah.
Can I just say one other thing about that? I talked a lot about consumer injury cases, which, I've done a lot of, but we don't have to go off too far. But I just want you to be aware, a lot of what I've done too is disputes within the supply chain.
We talked about that earlier.
Yeah. I mean,
which is a really good point to bring up.
Yeah. Let's put the consumers off to the side for just a moment, or hopefully they're all resolved. That's the goal.
Right.
Well, somebody's going to have some questions about, hey, I was just the grocery store. I just sold this product. I didn't touch this product. Then another person is going to say, well, I just transported this product. Another person is going to say, well, I grew this product, but all the testing shows there were no pathogens in it. Well, as you can imagine, that can sometimes lead to disputes, sometimes litigation within the consumer's claim, which is not very smart, but it happens. So, what do you think happens when a jury hears an injured consumer and then 3 food supply people arguing in the same case? What do you think happens? Jill, what do you think happens with that?
Well, I think you'd be my phone a friend.
Well, I think it doesn't turn out so well for the entire supply chain. But anyway, so that is done as well. And I do that because those disputes, sometimes they don't go to litigation because you're dealing with business partners, but they need to get resolved. And as a mediator, that's, hopefully because of my experience with the industry, that's something I enjoy quite a bit too.
Yeah. And you probably have identified some gaps just in the supply chain on, okay, you two as partners need to close this gap because it's going to continue to cause issues. It's going to continue to cause, disputes.
Yeah. Now staying in my lane, I'm just a lawyer or a retired lawyer. I'm not a food safety professional. I wanted to be one maybe until I got a C- at Oregon State chemistry, but as a music major. But so, I stay in my lane. But yes, I've learned things from food safety professionals about how we can, what maybe could be done better. These are pathogens. We can't see them.
Right.
And your audience knows you can test your way, can test all you want, but you may not find the pathogen. So you all know that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think there's definitely more that we can know about that and probably should. But I also know that we wanted to talk a little bit about succession planning because that's another passion of yours. So I wanted to spend a few minutes and ask about, what led you to be a believer in succession planning and you advocate for it? I follow you on LinkedIn and I see you sharing that message of really, if you haven't started succession planning, What do you need to do? What do people do right? And where are pitfalls in it? So I'm going
Yeah.
to open that up to you.
Well, I am very passionate about succession planning. I know a kind of an odd combination, maybe food safety and succession planning, but having spent my entire career in law firms, and having had a fair amount of leadership positions in my two law firms, it just became a real interest of mine. And again, I'm focused only on lawyers, and so I know every industry is different. I don't know all the issues about succession planning in the food industry. I don't know hardly any issues about the succession. I watch what you two do, and I know you talk about succession planning, so I'm interested. But I come from the lawyer background, and I just feel very strongly that we have an obligation as a legal industry to make sure we're raising up the next generation of lawyers. Lawyers are important so, to our society in some ways, and in law firms have some challenges with a new generation of lawyers, and so I feel really passionate about that. And I also, having just finished my succession planning journey, I've told you this before, I enjoyed the journey so much. If you say the word succession planning to a lawyer, often the first thing they'll think is the R word. We call it the R word. And I totally understand that. And there is uncertainty and fear. Sometimes hard for lawyers to admit those kinds of things. I've worked with a lot of lawyers, and I would just my point is that succession planning is way more than about retirement. Succession planning is planning for success. That's what I think succession planning is. And retirement might be a destination, but so might a new position within your food company, a totally new position. Well, you have to plan for your successor.
Yes.
In my world, in the legal world, let's say you totally change your practice. All of a sudden you want to become a food safety lawyer. You might have to totally change your practice, but you have a nice stable of clients. Well, you have to plan for how those clients are going to be taken care of. That's succession planning.
Yes. Yeah.
And also, of course, retirement that's an okay thing too. I did it. And, I guess maybe I'm semi-retired. Let's call it that. So yes, I'm passionate about succession planning. And I feel I'm really enjoying talking with people about that. Mostly lawyers. I would like to talk to others as well. But I have been talking to law firms and lawyers for a long time, before I retired, about the subject. So that's the answer.
Well, I'm glad you're talking to us about it, because we too, we're passionate about succession planning, because you're exactly right. If you just take out lawyers and put food safety professional or put technical expert, or, insert anyone that's listening to us right now, insert their role. They need succession planning. And we see the same things in the food industry. And because we've been in this space where we talk about people all the time, and we help organizations prioritize the well-being of their people, we see it where there is no succession planning, or we're not sure, right, who can be the leader after someone retires or after they get promoted, right? Or if someone leaves the organization, who is going to step up and be a leader? And so what we see is that something happens, right? Like a retirement, or someone left the organization, or someone gets promoted. And then we scramble to try to figure out, who has just a little bit of skill that can maybe step into the role. And then that's just a downhill fall, right? Where it's like someone gets promoted, we haven't really equipped them with the right leadership skills. And then now everyone's thinking, oh, my manager is not great at this role. And then now I'm disengaged, and now we're having retention. Like, it really is a slippery
vicious
slope.
cycle.
It is. So we talk a lot about it, because if you are not doing succession planning and you're not equipping your people with the right leadership skills, then we see the exact same things that you're talking about when it comes to lawyers.
Yeah, I don't know that the things are that different. Lawyers have clients, and so outside clients, and so that's one of the issues that a lawyer has worked often very hard for many years to develop those client relationships, and to be able to first step away. But also, if you want to step away, you want to feel good about that this client is in the hands of another lawyer who is going to take care of the client. That's a very valid concern. And I'm sure that the same kind of you have in the food industry, or you have relationships out with outside people or inside that have been built up over many years, and you want to make sure that your outside clients and your inside clients, I imagine, are well taken care of. So similar issues, I think.
It is. And I think one of your recent posts talked about this topic that really resonated with me, because you said lawyers are trained in law, and many industries have ceded management authority to people who are more like management experts.
Yep.
And we talk about that in our area as well, because while we're highly technically trained, we're not always trained as leaders or good managers. And so that skill gap is something that you can close and needs to close, so that we can do succession planning and support the organization from having that as an additional risk, because there aren't people to carry things forward.
Yeah, this was not something I was taught in law school. So, and I doubt people were taught about this when they got their microbiology degrees or something.
Right.
Which is right. But, lawyers, sometimes lawyers don't think they need help on managing or leading, but I certainly learned that I did over the years. It's not something that I think you can learn it, but it's not something that I knew about instantly. So anyway,
it's the same thing with food safety professionals. Like we run into it, right? Where people do not have the skills. We weren't taught it in school. We've been doing the best that we can, right?
Well, I think you're doing I think what you two are doing is a tremendous service to your industry. So I'll just give you that little plug, because it's so important. And I don't know how many people I don't know your industry well enough to know how many people are talking about this, but it's really important. And it doesn't tend to be on the top of lawyers' lists or law firm lists either to talk about, but they know it's important, and they're certainly open to it, but just need to get the discussion started.
Right. And have someone help them, right? We also run into where it takes some time. You've been through succession planning, right? As a part of your retirement. That takes time. It might even feel like an extra job for some periods, because you have to think about it, right? You have to, what if there is no one, right? How are you going to build the next person up, right? How are you going to identify them? I mean, all of these questions and all of these things, you're going to have to start putting things into motion. And when you have a job that you already feel overwhelmed, or you have so much on your plate, it's hard to say, yes, I'm going to also now spend an additional X amount of hours a week focusing on this. And that's when partnerships can help, right? Having someone to help you with succession planning, it becomes very important.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I certainly have heard over the years, what do you mean? That I'm not getting paid for succession planning. So, but we talk through that. But, understanding, people have a lot of other things on their plate. But I will tell you, because I just went through it, to do it right, succession planning takes about twice as long as you think that it might take. That's my calculation.
Months and years.
Well, I would say years. When you're talking about, and now I'm coming at it from a lawyer's perspective, but in terms of thinking about who's the right lawyer for the client, who's my successor lawyer, do we have the right skill set? Does this person have food safety experience. I'm just using food safety, but you know, and that doesn't happen in months.
Right.
And you know, I've also at my last firm, I did serve as succession planning partner, a title, but in addition to practicing, I was working with a lot of lawyers, and sometimes lawyers would, you know, tell us maybe 6 months or so before they were going to retire. Ooh, that's a pretty short amount of time.
Yeah. Tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
such good stuff on food safety.
Well, at least the three of us think it's good stuff. But
it is. And I'm sure our audience does too. They're going to drop all those notes in the chat and let us know. And if they are curious, right? Questions, because we're going to answer all those too. So
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. David, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on Real Talk this week.
Oh, thank you both so much for inviting me. This is really, you know, food industry is pretty dear to my heart. I hope you know, and it's really great what you two are doing and what your industry doing. So I'm excited to watch succession planning in the food industry, and then I hope I never see anybody as a mediator, but you know, if it happens, the industry is doing the right thing. I've always believed that. It's one of the reasons I enjoyed being a lawyer for this industry. I met some incredible people, really dedicated professionals, and was very professionally satisfying for me. So thank you for what you two are doing, and thank you, food industry professionals. You're doing an awesome job.
Oh, what a great shout out, David. That is the perfect way to wrap up our show for this week.
Yes, well, absolutely. Thank you.
So thank you again. And thank you to our audience. Yes. And we'll be back here again, same time, same place next week. So until then, be well.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.